recently had started to think, you know what's better than cannibalism? What could possibly be better than cannibalism? What could make me feel even closer to these people? What could it possibly be? Oh, I don't know. What could give me more power? Oh, I don't know. Maybe making humans zombies. So the husband was like, ugh, then the meats, please leave the boy. It's a dead bodies stinking up the whole place. Welcome back to my channel, everybody. And if you're new, well, hey, what's up? What's good? Thank you so much for joining me. Please don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Today I will be talking about another serial killer. For those who are new, I do serial killer segments on Fridays, or I'll do a diagnostic criteria or psychopathology or mental disorder breakdown on Fridays. So this Friday, this is what you're getting. So today we'll be talking about Aileen Wuornos. She's said to be the first female serial killer in the United States. That's up to very big debates, because when you actually Google the first female serial killer, she's not who actually pops up. But I think it's the pandemonium that followed the trial and followed her, and how the events went down, that make her so to people, But let's get into it. Aileen was born in 1956, and she had a pretty hard childhood, if we're being very honest. She had a very difficult childhood. Her father was in and out of prison. Okay, first of all, he got married to her mom, and then her mom had her older brother, and then she married the father and then had Aileen a little bit later. And then right before having Aileen, she filed for divorce. But then a little after Aileen was born, her father would go to jail, and then he'd be in and out of jail, and he'd do horrendous crimes, like for child molestation, child rape, all that, like dirty, ugly stuff to do with children. So he was a lot. And then on top of that, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and yeah, what a life. And then eventually he does commit suicide in prison. So her mother, when Aileen was around 4 years old, her mom took her and her brother and dropped them off at her parents' house, and then never came back. So she took them, dropped her at her parents, and she never came back for Aileen or her brother. So the grandparents, had to take the children in, and then eventually they'd go on to adopt Aileen and her brother. And then their life just went completely south after that. Aileen and her brother would partake in, in incestuous relations. So I'm not really sure if those were consensual. I highly doubt it, because she was really young when that happened, and her grandfather was no better. By the time she was 11, she was already exchanging sexual favors for food, for cigarettes, for money, for whatever she could exchange it for. And then her grandfather, at the other hand, was a complete nightmare. He was a very angry person and a very abusive person, and he would also sexually abuse her and rape her, and even call on family friends or just his friends to come on home and do as they pleased with her. So it was really on top of the incest with the brother. Like, it was just really horrific. And then when she was 14, she fell pregnant, and I've heard several reports about who the father is. I've heard the grandfather, I've heard the brother, and I just heard one of the family friends. So who knows? Honestly, with how they treated her, honestly, genuinely, who knows? Like, anyone could be the father at this point. So it was just terrible, horrible. Wow. Yeah. So okay, after that, when she was 15, she had to drop out of school. And when she dropped out of school, she went to a home for unwed pregnant ladies. But then after that, she had to give the child away. She gave the child up for adoption, and that was that with the baby. It was the baby boy, if anybody cares. And then after that, she and her brother would then be kicked out of the home by the grandfather, because the grandmother would pass on a few years prior. She'd pass on from, I'll write it down at the bottom, but she would pass on, and she herself wasn't really that helpful. I've heard reports that she was an abusive drunk, so how much help could she have been anyway? So shortly after she was 15, she and her brother got kicked out of the house, and they went their separate ways. Her brother did who knows what, and then she went to go and then be homeless and like live literally like in a forest if she had to, or as now where the story is going to, she became a prostitute. 15, she became a prostitute, and well, let me say a sex worker. I will use that word again later, but there'll be a different reason why. So she became a sex worker and would do petty theft. As her life would go on, because after those years, no one really knows what exactly happened, because even though she's done like multiple interviews, she's not really that descriptive. She doesn't really tell much about what really happened. She'll just talk a lot and like very animatedly about the crimes and stuff like that. And even when she talks about the crimes, she will go off topic really easily, or not go off topic, but she would change the story and change the narrative all the time, you know. So her stories were very wishy-washy, so goodness knows what she was doing between 15 and beyond, because in the mid 1970s then she would get arrested for disorderly conduct, and all her bar fights, she used to get into several bar fights. So then she got arrested for that, and then when she was finally released, I think a year later, she moved to Florida. And then when she moved to Florida, she met an old man, and they got married, fell in love, got married. But then because of these repetitive bar fights, and then she got arrested again because of a bar fight, and when she came out, she attacked her husband with reportedly a cane, his cane at that. She attacked him with that, and then he was like, you know what, because he was a wealthy man, he was a wealthy yachtsman, so he was like, you know what, this is not cut out for me. No, child, little girl, stop. You know, didn't go with his vibe, didn't go with his lifestyle, you know. So then he left, and he got an annulment, and a restraining order against her. So that was like 9 weeks after their wedding, so that definitely didn't even last long. After that whole schmeal, she'd move back to Michigan, and then shortly after moving back to Michigan, her brother would pass on. He would leave her $10,000 from his insurance. She'd use that to pay off a fine that she had just received, and then after that she'd also use the money to buy a luxury car, and then went on to crash that car while driving under the influence or some, yeah, I think it was driving under the influence. She just blew it, gone. And then after she blew it, she moved back to Florida, and when she moved back, she went back into prostituting and back into her like old ways. And then in 1986, she'd get arrested again for pulling a gun on a customer and demanding money from him, because she would demand money and steal money from customers from anywhere and anything she could possibly steal from. And she says of herself that she was very sloppy with her crimes. Like, she didn't care at all if anyone like knew that it was her or came after her, or all these million arrests. She didn't care for them, because like, okay, I knew that I wasn't being very clean with it, so yeah. And the following year, in 1987, she would move in with a hotel maid. Now this hotel maid, I'm going to call her Ash, okay? First of all, Ash would become her demise. Well, really, killing all those men would become her demise. But anyway, but Ash would, you know, she'd sign the dotted line for her. So Ash, she became romantically involved with her, and she just became so in love with her. And, you know, obviously men, she had a really deep hatred for men. She said so multiple times, that she had a really deep hatred for men. Can you blame her? So Ash was like a breath of fresh air for her, you know. She was just someone brand new, someone who like I suppose would treat her right and take her for who she was, because they'd become like a Bonnie and Clyde, you know, like the yin to her yang, the everything, you know, the sweet chili to her sandwiches. Like she would, they would just mash together, you know, mashed potato and butter, man, you know, they just mushed together, they just worked. So obviously you can see how she just like fell in love with this person who actually completely at the time like loved her back, you know, and reciprocated what she was giving, and finally got something that she technically had never really gotten in her life before, you know. So she completely fell in love with Ash, and like I said, they'd go on to be Bonnie and Clyde. Not long after that, she would finally come to her first victim. She, okay, well, first of all, she would continue with the sex working, and that's how she made a living for her and Ash. She would either pick up men or the men would pick her up, but normally it would be the men picking her up, especially if she was going to murder them. The men would pick her up because she was a hitchhiker slash sex worker, so they'd pick her up, she'd get into the car, then they'd go do, you know, the boom bam. So that's so childish. Anyway, so this man would pick her up and then they'd go together, and he would end up actually becoming her first victim. She would shoot him 3 times. She reported that he tried to rape her. He came on to her and she didn't want to do what he wanted her to do, so she shot him with a 22. What is it? Whatever those gun terms are, man. It was a 22 though. So she shot him with that. And I mean, yeah, his body was found 13 days after that, but his car would be found the day after the murder. So obviously he would be reported missing, and then obviously we know he wasn't really missing, he was gone. And then the day after, the car would pop up, and then only 13 days, well 12 days later, his naked body would be found. And on the topic of her saying that he raped her, it would actually be found out later that he actually was a rapist, and he had been convicted for that, and he had been incarcerated, and he had been released a few years prior to that whole incident. So believe whoever story you want to believe. Her second victim would then be found 6 months after this first victim, and it would be found that he was actually missing since May, and he was found like towards the end of the year, and he was shot 6 times with a 22 again. And when that body was found, a third body was found, and that one was found with 9 bullets in it by a 22 again. And this one was so badly decomposed though, so it took a while for them to actually figure out who the body had belonged to. Those ones were 1989, and now in 1919, her fourth victim would be, well, fourth, because this one is one that she doesn't really admit to, doesn't speak about, wasn't convicted for, because the body was never found. So it's one that people just assume was her again, because he was shot. No, how do they know what he was shot with? Come on. Because she and Ash were in the car, and then they crashed because they were having an argument apparently, and then they crashed the car, and then the crash was so loud that people came out and they were like, "Are you guys okay?" And they were like, "Oh, yeah, whatever, we're fine, don't worry about us, we're cool, thanks, okay," and then they ran. Like, what a way to play it cool, what a play to be coy, what a way to be coy. So that was obviously very suspicious, and then they called the cops, and when the cops got there, they found a palm print in the car. And when they found that, obviously that's not very good. It's a palm print, you know, it has fingerprints, we can identify you, and on top of that, the people who obviously had seen them told those sketch people what they looked like. The fifth victim is identified and everything because he was a delivery man, and his delivery was never made on that day. So when the delivery was never made, obviously the boss is like, excuse me, and calls 911, and then 911 is like, okay, and then they find his delivery truck the next day, and his body is found a few days later, and he had been shot twice again by a. After that, number 6 and 7, victim 6 and 7 arise. One was shot 7 times, one was shot 3 times, And then by December of 1990, Aileen and Ash are very well, like, they're looking for them. The cops are looking for them. They have good leads. They put out, I want to say, an APB. I'm sorry. They put out the sketch pictures of them on the news and everywhere. And they were trying to get everybody involved into finding them, because now they're like, okay, you know what? This must be something, because of that. And then on top of that, the palm print leads them to obviously the database, because okay, no, let me not get there first. The palm print leads them to a fingerprint that was found in a pawn shop, because Aileen would use aliases to sell stuff that she would find in the cars of the men. So she'd go to a pawn shop and she'd sell these things. But in the state of Florida, if you're gonna pawn things, you have to either have an ID, obviously, so she'd have a fake one with the alias, and then you have to put your fingerprint as well. So when she put her fingerprint, you can fake your fingerprint, but then I think it's pretty hard when the man is standing right, or whoever the pawn shop owner is like right there, So they found her fingerprints there in the pawn shop, in 2 pawn shops, and then they saw all these aliases and they matched them all together, because like I was about to say earlier, her fingerprints are already in the database, because she's been arrested so many times that they know you. They got you. So that is really what tipped them off. And then because of all of that and the fact that Ash was always riding with Aileen, it wasn't that hard to find Ash either. And Ash and Aileen had actually broken up. They had a very huge argument and split up and went their separate ways. So Ash was all the way in somewhere in America, and Aileen was still in Florida. So they knew they couldn't just pounce on Aileen, they had to do it right. They had to get her this one time. So they go and they fetch Ash, right? And they're like, from her sister's house, and they're like, okay, you know what? Let's strike a deal with you, okay? We know you're not the actual murderer. We know you're not the one who did this. So how about you just, let us know about your buddy. What did your buddy do? Tell us your buddy's, doings. And then Ash is like, you know what, actually, I'm going to tell you that the first victim, I know for a fact that Aileen did this. She came to me, she confided in me, she told me about it, she told me that she did it. I know that she did it. So if you're going to want more cooperation, sure, I'll strike this deal with you. I don't want to be incarcerated. So she goes to a motel with the police, and then they do all their pluggy nonsense, and then they record the phone calls, and she keeps talking to Aileen, talking. Aileen is not giving anything away. Aileen is Miss Tight Lip. She's, I will even insert another video up it later of her being even more tight lipped. Like, she is MVP of tight lippity lip, but LOVE. That thing will make you dizzy. So eventually Ash is like, okay, you know what, if I don't want to go to jail, I need to crank it up. And she's like, Aileen, I can't go to jail. You want me to go to jail? They're gonna take me. Why won't you just tell the truth? Just come clean, I'm begging you, please come clean. They want to take me down with you. Do I deserve to go down with you? Whatever, pulling on those heartstrings, I thought you loved me, basically, like, how can you do this to me? If you love me, if you love me, come clean. If you love me, do this for me, So, she's going in, right? And then eventually LOVE wins, and Aileen's like, okay, fine, Ash, I don't want you to go to jail. You didn't do it, I did it all. So back at the ranch with Aileen, right, before they had struck the deal with Ash, they go to Aileen. She's at a bar called The Last Resort. It's very funny that was her last place, because last resort, last place. Sorry. Anyway, so she's at a bar called The Last Resort, and then the police get undercover men to go there and like see if she's gonna try to weasel him out and like kill him, So he goes in there, he's talking to her nice, whatever, nah. And then just when they see Uguti, she's getting a bit, comfortable with him and whatever, they make him take her outside. And then when they go outside, the police are there. So the police start screaming at the man, right? The undercover guy. They're screaming at him, wah, 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 why are you doing this, that. And he's like, what are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. No, 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 no. And it's a big, hoo-ha. And she like, and they're like, we're taking you too, ma'am. Okay, we got you for, an old conviction. We're taking you down for that. And they arrest her and she's like, what the hell are you talking about? They're like, yeah, there's an outstanding warrant for you. And she like, warrant for who? Warrant for what? I ain't been doing none. But they take her, right? And they throw them back both into the back seat. And then this clip happens.
What's going on, girl?
I don't know what's going on.
What do you mean? Why the they talking about a warrant?
Honey, you're probably one of these little undercover suckers. Doing some kind of and I don't know what's going on. And
Who you talking about? What the you talking about?
I don't know what's going on.
I don't
I
know
have no
what
idea.
the going on either.
Either do I. What the hell? What? Tell me.
You tell me.
Tell me. I don't know. What?
And you see, after that, she don't say nothing. So that's when move to Ash. Ash goes and she goes. And then Aileen does what? She breaks and she finally tells the truth. And then there she is, taken down for the murder of 6 men, because that's all she confessed to. Because the one with the body who never got found still never got found, because she just never did it. So then they took her down for that, and then she went into trial in 1992 for like basically the whole of the year. She was in trial and she got 6 death sentences. 6. I thought we only had 1 life. Well, she got 6 death sentences. And that trial was just, the media storm was berserk, And I don't know. It was just, when I watched an investigation discovery documentary on her, the end part really, got me, because the sexism was so crazy. Like, it's so wild. It's so wild. Like, you could tell, because one of those victims, I'm so sorry, I forgot to mention, one of those victims was a former police something. So like the police people really knew him, right? So even in the documentary, you could see how like enraged they were that she took him from them, Obviously, no, please, I'm not like saying it's fine to kill people. Of course they're going to be outraged. That was their friend, I'm getting to my point. I'm not saying murder is okay. Never in my life would I ever say that, because wow, I'm getting to a point. So you can see that they're like, wow, how dare she? But it's not even like a how dare she, it's a highlight the she. How dare a woman do this? How dare a prostitute do this? Like, how is she outsmarting these people? How is she like outweighing them like in strength? Like, how is she doing this? How did she kill 6 men in the span of 12 months? How? A prostitute? A woman? How dare she? Like, you could hear it in their voices. You could see it in their mannerisms, their body language. Like, they're so outraged and so irritated that it was a woman, a prostitute at that. They were so angry. I wish I could have found, I wouldn't have thingied it. I don't want to put like random people's faces, but I'm telling you, they were butthurt, all of them, even the judge. I was really looking for this line, and there's a line you say when like a judge says when they give someone the death penalty or the death sentence, whatever, and they say, may the man upstairs have mercy on your soul. I think it's have mercy on your soul, but he said have mercy on your corpse. Like, how vile is that too? Like, you're obviously you're not just as bad, but like, you're disgusting. I just can't deal with sexism. I'm so sorry. I can't deal with sexism. It enrages me so much. Murder enrages me. Don't think because I'm doing these murder thingies, I like, ooh, no, it doesn't intrigue me at all. I am intrigued by the human mind, okay? But at the same time, just do things right. You are a judge. You're supposed to be objective. Your job is objectivity. Okay, you listen to your jurors, you agree or you disagree with them, and that is it. You don't go changing words in something, you know? Even though her last words were like this long spiel about I deserve death, give me death, and she even rejected her last meal and this, that, and the fourth. Still, have dignity. Have dignity, please. Like, honestly, the whole, like, it was literally a media storm just because she was a female killing males. Literally it. So she went out and she would say that she was sane, and obviously, as I stated in the first video about murder stuff, you need to the court needs to believe that you were not sane for you to be trialed as someone who is mentally unstable. And might I remind you again, her father was schizophrenic. You can not exactly get that, but your genes can still be, you know, a bit lopsided because of that. It's a very thin chance, but it could still happen. And apparently, I'm not really sure, I really tried to like search as much as I can. Apparently she was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder. I don't like go into the disorders because that's why I have a disorder segment as well. That's why on Fridays I also tell you about a disorder, so that eventually you will know about all these disorders that I'm giving out to you anyway. So if you want to know about these disorders, subscribe. Otherwise, yeah. And I guess that is the story of Aileen Wuornos. She was put to death by injection. She chose the injection. The judges had actually ruled for electrocution, but they still asked her, and she said injection on the 9th of October 2002. And that was the story of her. And really quick side note, I absolutely despise that people watch you get electrocuted or get injected. That is horrendous. That is horrific. Why do you want to watch? And they were so into it too. Oh, I don't know how those interviews in that documentary were like aired. They were so amused. They were like, I enjoyed that. Like, not in words, but you could see they were like, yeah, you know, I was there. I watched her. I saw her die. I was watching her die. Sir. Ew. Anyway, you will decide. Is she, the famous words that they always use with her, is she a victim? Is she a monster? She's obviously not a good person. No one who kills anyone is a good person. I don't care if you even kill one person. You're not a good person. If you kill animals, to me, you're not a good person. People are gonna be like, well, are you vegan? I mean, like dogs and rhinos, okay? But anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. Please don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Especially if you want more content like this, especially if you want more psychological content. I love anything to do with psychology. Anything. So please don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And I will see you next week. Bye!